before it gets very, very, very windy and very, very, very wet. A quick lure session while it's still very windy and very wet. Storm Eunice on the way, but I'm up first thing to do some mini jigging. When I said the storm's on its way, actually it's here. It'll just be more intense later. However, I'm not a blanker because I've caught a small perch. I've just had a pike on as well, just briefly, maybe about 20-30 seconds. I could see it going very shallow water where I am and clear as well, and then the hook parted from the fish. So regardless of the conditions, it's feeding time for the fish, isn't it? And you may notice as well that it's not as windy where I am, and at the end of this video I will give some tips on storm fishing. So just because the storm's blowing doesn't mean to say you can't get out there, but there are some things that you need to bear in mind, but that's for later in the video. As you can see there, if you watch my videos regularly, then you'll know that I'm doing my mini jigging. It's my favourite way of lure fishing. I used to like fishing with Mepps Aglia spinners, size 2, size 1. Used to catch a lot of perch on those, and I think I'll probably get back onto them in due course. But you know what, angling is all about enjoyment, isn't it? And a bit of weed there, that's inevitable on a shallow lake, but it's why I use a very small jig head, in this case 0.7 grams. I've seen anglers on venues that are very shallow, very weedy, turn up with big heavy lures, and as soon as they cast into the water, oh, I think I might have one there, yeah, as soon as they cast into the water, as soon as they chuck the bait out, it's covered in weed. Not sure what this is. It could be a small pike, a very small pike. Indeed it is. Let's hope I can net this. I'll be back. The one that didn't get away, much smaller than the first fish that I caught though. A nice enough pike on this particular gear, however, fought really well, and always a pleasure to catch anything regardless of your target species that day. Another one on next cast as well. It's a perch this time. I'll just pull that one out. I can see it's well hooked. Small fish, but they're great, aren't they? Perch on a mini lure. Well, actually, I'm catching a fish every other cast, and I am crouching down here so I can get this fish held up properly. I want to show this one because it's the biggest so far. That's a nice enough pike, isn't it? Always make sure you're low on the ground. Got your unhooking mat just beneath you. No harm will come to the fish, but make sure you hold it properly as well. Don't be scared of pike. It's another thing, isn't it? It's a blog entry on its own, dealing with pike. But for now, I've got a firm grip on that one, and that's another fish. Let me get a nice shot there. What a productive session that was. That was great. I caught so many fish in just a short period of time. And as I often say, as long as your bait's in the water, you've got a chance. It's all about quality of time as well, isn't it? As opposed to just quantity. Being there at the right time, in the right place, that's what it's all about. Anyway, storm fishing. 3 tips on fishing in storms, because safety is the most important thing, and that's the umbrella that covers all of the tips. First of all, the venue. Choose your venue where you're going to fish very, very carefully indeed. You will notice today that although the winds were in the 40 to 50 mile an hour bracket, as I arrived, it did get worse. The pool itself was relatively calm. That's because I chose it carefully. It's hidden beyond a ridge, dense woodland, and then around it, it's in such a position that it doesn't always get the brunt of the wind. And then of course you look at direction of the wind as well. Imagine if I was on a big gravel pit somewhere open to the elements, you wouldn't have been able to fish. So choose your venue carefully from a fishing perspective. Secondly, choose your spot carefully, because on that particular place that I was today, I delegated to fish an area with no trees in the immediate spot that I was in. There are pegs that are surrounded by trees, and the last thing you want is to be fishing under trees during a storm, because branches can fall, trees can fall. I've seen those things happen over time. So choose your spot carefully, not just the venue, but choose your spot carefully. Also, I would say choose carefully where you park your car, because you don't want to be underneath a tree. A tree can land on your car and crush that. So your venue, choose that one, because say on the coast, for example, you might be in a particular cove that's really holding up well in the weather, as opposed to being out on the open beach with the winds coming directly at you. So venue, your particular spot on the venue itself. And then thirdly, the target or the type of fishing that you do. So whatever you're going for, you have to make sure when you're fishing in a storm that you're very flexible. I was lure fishing, that's perfect. Minimal amount of gear. I can move around, I can take up a new spot if I want to, I can keep an eye on what's going on around me. Perhaps the last thing you want to do is to bivvy up, settle down, and maybe a tree lands on you. Even if you're fishing not that far away from one, or it's a small one, branches can still get blown down and cause damage to your bivvy, even if it doesn't actually kill you, because that's what you're trying to avoid, aren't you? And people do die when trees land on the cars or land on them. So although it might be a minimal risk, why take that risk? So the way you fish, I think, is very important as well. Also from a practical point of view, how you present a bait, the target of the fish that you're going for. It's easier to fish a particular way in a storm than it is another. But safety, that is the most important factor. Don't shy away from fishing in adverse conditions, but always think safety. Where are you going to? Is it a pool that's sheltered? Is it a spot that enables you to fish in relative safety? The actual place that you're going to set up in, is that a good spot? Any trees around? Water, is it shallow just in front of you? All those factors that you have to bear in mind. And then of course the target, the fish that you're going for, the way that you're fishing. Is it a practical way of targeting fish on that particular occasion? But once you've got all that sorted, as I proved today, get out there, enjoy and catch some fish.